Welcome to the tribe. Today our guest is Valorie Kondos Field, the legendary former head coach of the UCLA women's gymnastics team and seven-time NCAA champion. Her coaching philosophy concentrates on personal growth and mental well-being, as she shares in her book, Life is Short, Don't Wait to Dance. As a speaker and author, she inspires others with her insights on leadership and resilience. Miss Val, it's a pleasure having you today. Welcome to the tribe.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored.
Well, the story behind today's guest, I was prospecting for the Tribe podcast, and I usually use LinkedIn or Instagram. And this time I went to the mail list of the speakers of the Winning Summit back in 2021, and the mail of Miss Val got my attention. So first I downloaded her book and I started reading it, and just on the forward, I realized that it was worth it. So I sent her an email, and in less than an hour, she wrote me, "I'm in." So to start this conversation, I want to ask about how the way people call you, because it's part of your brand, Miss Val. And I can recall when I was back in school, I named my teachers Miss Carol, Miss Anne, and it's very rare to have a coach named Miss. So what is the story behind that way that they call you?
That is a great comparison. Excuse me, with how you were brought up. Anybody who knows my story now knows I've never done gymnastics. I was a ballerina, and I came from a professional career in dancing to UCLA to be their dance coach and the choreographer for the gymnastics team. And I think within the first few days, the head coach asked me to take the athletes upstairs to the ballet room and to give them a ballet class. And so I was like, okay. And so I start in, and one of the student athletes, she was a little smart ass at the time, but I appreciated it. And she just stopped and she went, since you're not a coach, are we supposed to call you Miss Val? And because she said, no, I think she said something like, I've had ballet before and I always call my teacher Miss. Am I supposed to call you Miss Val because you're not a coach? And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, call me Miss Val. I don't care. And it stuck. That was 1982. And it stuck.
Okay, and you were in choreography, and you have the offer to join the UCLA, and you jump on the chance, and great people take their decisions fast, and you move on regardless and took the chance.
Yeah. Well, since I've been in sports now for over 40 years, and I love this metaphor, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And I remember very, very clearly, I remember being 22 years old and I was dancing professionally. And I remember hearing UCLA needed a dance coach for their gymnastics team, and I'd not gone to college. Combine that with the fact I was raised by parents who never tried to put me and my brother in a box. My father was a well-renowned artist, and I mean, he bucked the system coming from immigrant parents from Greece. And his dad said, you're not going to make a living as an artist. And my dad's like, well, that's my passion, so I'm going to find a way to do it. And so between him and my mom, like, I never grew up with an understanding or a belief in failure, ever, ever, ever. If you try to do something and you don't do it well, it's not failure because you've learned something from it. What to do better the next time. So when I got this crazy idea to contact the head coach of UCLA Gymnastics and say, hey, I've had 17 years of classical ballet training. I'm a choreographer. I hear you need a dance coach for a gymnastics team. I think I'm the perfect fit. I never thought not to do that. And why I love sharing this part of my story is I had a 37-year career at UCLA. I was the head coach for 29 years, never done a cartwheel in my life. Since then, I've had tremendous opportunities speaking and choreographing, and I'm producing the Simone Biles Gold of America tour right now. And I have all these opportunities that would have never, ever, 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 ever come up had I been too afraid to pick up the phone and make the ask.
Yeah. That's great. And you mentioned something interesting that you will find a way to make a living in a new venture. And the thing that you weren't afraid of failing. And the person who hired you as a head coach, I think she's a genius because you added too many things regarding, I've reading your book, your strategies, your tactics, and sometimes the people who mentor you see in yourself things that you aren't aware of.
Yes. I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry, you cut out.
No, it's not a question, but
Oh,
sometimes people are aware of something that we aren't aware of. They
yes.
see in us something
Yeah,
that we don't see, and they believe before we believe in us. Because when you start as a head coach, you didn't have perhaps all the assets or all the knowledge to start the position.
100%. And my first few years were dismal. Our team was horrible, not because of them. It was they were horrible because of me. Um, and I was literally going to go resign. And I remember thinking, you know what? They hired me for a reason. They saw something in me that as you just said, that I didn't see because I was comparing myself to what the status quo was saying. And the status quo was saying UCLA Gymnastics is one of the premier programs, athletic programs in the country, and stupid UCLA just hired this ballerina to take it over. Well, you're mentioning Dr. Judy Holland, who hired me. She's the godmother of Title IX, and she was known for having a sixth sense in hiring her head coaches. And when you look at the coaches she hired, we all stayed there for 30 plus years. But she got tremendous, tremendous hate when thank God social media really wasn't around then. But she got emails and phone calls and how could you do this to one of the premier coach programs country? And, and I felt like I bought into what this, what the status quo was saying. And then once I silenced that noise and got back to your question of what does she see in me that I don't quite see in myself? And she said, when I asked her that, she said, I've observed how you are firm, but you are compassionate with the athletes. And that combination is what anybody who wants to achieve a standard level of excellence, success, sustained level of excellence needs. They need a firm hand and a compassionate hand.
And that are two great assets, compassion and being firm. And you started reading a book that changed your coaching life. You had a chance to meet legendary coach John Wooden, and you invited him, or your husband invited him for dinner. And how was, if we can go back then to that moment, what happened there that makes it happen a permanent bond between you both?
Um, the best I can think about this, because people have asked me, his players have asked me, Coach Wooden's players have asked me, how did you develop a stronger relationship and closer relationship with him than I had, than his players had? Some of his players, he had very close relationships with a few of them, but they were wondering also, how's this gymnastics coach, dance lady, having this really, really like familial family type of relationship with Coach Wooden? And I think it's because Coach Wooden and my husband are very much alike. They both grew up farming. They grew up very, 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 very poor. My husband grew up sharecropping. They had nothing. They both grew up, Coach Wooden and my husband both grew up with parents who instilled the Bible in them. Like it wasn't just on Sundays. It was multiple times during the week, and they had a very strong faith. And they grew up with this. Both Coach Wood and my husband are very steady and just kind of like that, what we think of the greatest generation having, that jump in and that work ethic and don't make waves and just be grateful and the whole bit. Okay, so then Coach Wooden marries Nellie. Nellie was a Spitfire. Nellie was the one that got him out and doing things. Nellie was the one who liked to get out and kick up her heels. Then he has his daughter, Nan Wooden. Nan Wooden is a spitfire. Go outside, buck the status quo, the whole bit. Guess what? Enter Miss Val. I am of that same ilk as his daughter, who became like a surrogate mom to me. My mom passed away many years ago. Coach Wooden's daughter, Nan, became like my second mom. And then her mother was the same. And so when I look at my personality and how me and my husband have gelled, because I am crazy lady all over the map, and here's steady Eddie over here, and that was Coach Wooden. I mean, his wife, his daughter, me, he liked that energy, I'm going to say, with people, or at least the women he surrounded himself with. And so, I mean, I challenged him all the time. We had conversations like I challenged Coach Wooden.
Wow, that's interesting. And you
But I do have
follow.
to share a story with you. I have to share one story with you. I just thought of it, and you mentioned my book. My book is called Life is Short, Don't Wait to Dance. And the title is an homage to Coach Wooden, because in his later years, much later, like he died at 99, so like 95 and on, whenever I was with him, people would always say, Coach, you've lived an illustrious life. Do you have any regrets? And he always answered the same. His blue eyes would get all misty, and he would say, my wife Nellie loved to dance, and I never danced with her because I was worried that people were going to make fun of me. And he said, so I never danced with my wife. And now I realized, had I danced with my wife, nobody would have made fun of me. They just would have seen a couple deeply in love dancing together. He said, and then he gets all teary-eyed. He goes, so if I have one regret, I would dance with my wife. And so, life short, don't wait to dance, is how the book
Yeah,
title came.
yeah, he doesn't need to be the number one dancer to dance with his wife. And you follow his steps. And some moment you have to own your own identity. When that happened and how did that happen?
It happened, a lot of it happened organically, because not only, what I was bringing to the table was, okay, so the first thing that happened was when I stopped and thought, what do I bring to the table that people don't really realize, that outside world, that outside noise? What is it? And I thought, you know what? Our sport is called artistic gymnastics. There's not another coach coaching gymnastics in the country that has my background. I can teach movement and performance quality better than anybody that's coaching gymnasts. That is going to become our brand. And it did. So all those viral routines that happened after that happened because I was meticulous with their understanding of performance and theater and staging. Like, I staged their floor routines. Most choreographers for gymnasts don't do that. They just choreograph like in a square. But I always thought, where's the biggest audience? Where are the judges sitting? And I would stage the choreography. And I think all those, like, my next book is called Sweat the Small Stuff, but all those little details is what ended up making UCLA Gymnastics a global brand. That combined, like you're asking me about my personal style, that this kind of flamboyant dancer, creative, artistic lady leading a gymnastics program, combined with the fact that I'm Greek. I'm 100% Greek, which means I hug a lot and I kiss a lot and I get in your personal space a lot. And I used to have coaches saying it. Lisa Fernandez, like the greatest softball player that ever played the game, she came up to me after one meet. She goes, I don't get it. Nia Dennis fell off the beam and you gave her a hug and a kiss on the cheek. What the heck? She fell. I was like, she didn't mean to fall. Like, she wasn't trying to fall, Lisa. And so my whole, that motherly nurturing, I love you. And a big part of I love you is I'm holding you accountable to the standards that we have set. And we are doing a documentary on our last national championship. So I have had an opportunity to interview a lot of our athletes. about the program and the culture and the whole bit. And every single one of them has said, you know, Miss Val, gymnastics was the byproduct of us taking responsibility with the integrity and the character in our lives that we choose. And so we started every single morning with gratitude. And they would say, starting with that gratitude every day, not just lasted through the 3 hours of training, but it lasted through their whole day. And that's just one example of the compound effect of all of the little things that I was maniacal about. And it wasn't gymnastics.
Yeah, I was reading the book and I reached the word leotard. I didn't know what it means. And I keep on reading. And then you add backless leotard. And I got interested. And then you added uh, some unshakable hairstyle.
Mm-hmm.
And I was all in there. So, did you realize that you changed the game in gymnastics? As you
Yeah,
said, because you changed the game.
yeah, yeah. I did. I brought the artistic side of the sport to the sport. Yeah. And when
And
you look at the brand, like you look at Caitlin Ohashi has had over 260 million views on her floor routine. Okay, that's not just gymnastics fans, and that's not just US, that's global. And I've had emails coming in from people all over the world saying, I love to watch you send gymnastics because you do really hard gymnastics at a really high level, but you do it with joy. Joy is the one word people feel when they watched our athletes perform.
yes, and in another part of the book, you mentioned that you make the athletes and all the staff make a personality assessment, the Enneagram, and which
Mm-hmm.
I did because I'm very tidy, so I
Uh-huh.
keep your word. And I am the idealistic humanitarian, as you are the helper. And what the Enneagram can do or can help an athlete in their personality, or what they can be aware of doing that assessment.
Mm-hmm. I think any personality assessment, people that are not fans of them feel that they put you in a box, but I don't feel that's the purpose of the personality assessment. And we chose to use the Enneagram. It's the one that made the most sense to me. Um, but a personality assessment just gives you some awareness of where you automatically go when you're not choosing your responses in life. So how, like when you're reactive, where do you naturally go to? Or when you're not in a good place, where is that? And I found the Enneagram to be spot on with that. We did it every year for two main reasons. One was I really wanted to do anything I could to help our student athletes become more self-aware. So I started coaching them when they're 18. So the majority of our student athletes were 18 to 22 years old. And that's really at a time in their lives that they're becoming aware. And the one thing I wanted them to learn was life is about choice. Every single thing you do in life is a choice, including your thoughts, starting with your thoughts. And every choice you make in life is going to have numerous repercussions. And as soon as they would understand that they could control their actions, their emotions by their thoughts, they stopped being victims in life. And so one of the best ways to help them do that is to help them understand through a personality assessment of where you go. Like as a 2, as a helper, as soon as I read, when I'm not in a good place, I get extremely manipulative. That is spot on. And so every time now I'm in a confrontation and I shut down, my inner voice is going, this is it. You're being manipulative right now. I mean, you shutting down is being manipulated. And so having that awareness. So that's the one reason we did the test. The other reason we did the test, the assessment, excuse me, was it helped us give each other grace. And so we went through everybody's assessments. We spent like 2 days with a leadership guru going over this. And then we would put those assessments up on the board in the gym. And whenever someone was having a struggle, a problem with somebody else or a coach, it was really interesting to see them take a time out and go up to the Enneagram and just check it out again. And what it did was, as I said, it gave us grace, and grace basically of giving the person the benefit of the doubt that they're not trying to be a jerk, that they're not trying to make her miserable, that they're not, what they said may be hurtful, but it's coming from a place that they may not be in the best place. So it's really not about you, it's about them. And that was so powerful, especially for young women to learn grace.
Yeah, it provides certain direction and reinforce
Mm-hmm.
the team building also. And there's some activity that you perform that is rare. I think most of the coaches didn't do it about public speaking in young athletes. You develop it in a safety environment.
Mm-hmm.
So why you do that?
I feel it's really important to be able to be comfortable in your own skin when you're speaking to people, whether it's one person or a group or in front of 10,000 people. And I, I think a part of me being comfortable speaking is because I grew up on stage. Um, but the other part of it is I'm not afraid to make mistakes. And I've learned that when I make a mistake speaking in front of people and I own that mistake, it actually endears you more to your audience. Before, back when I first coaching, before the NCAA put in the time rules, like right now, you can only engage or you can only mandate 20 hours of the student athlete's time during the week. We didn't have that when I first, so we had media training. We were able to bring people in and have a time for media training. We didn't have that anymore because the time constraint from the NCAA. So I thought I'm going to utilize whatever little snippets of time I do have. So the night before gymnastics competitions is usually when the head coach gives the pregame, we're going to go annihilate and crush them and kill them. And I suck at pregame. I suck at pregame rah rah speeches. I'm really good on the one-on-one. I'm not good in that moment. And part of it is like, seriously, you need to be hyped up. Like, we did all this work during the week. If you're not ready to go out and perform and show what you can do, then we haven't done our job. If you need a pump up thing, we haven't done our job. So that was part of it. So the night before meets, and as you said, in a safe and trusting environment, we made it very, very fun. And you can read about this in the book, but I would take ridiculous topics and give them maybe 10 minutes to prepare. And then they got judged, like Dancing with the Stars. There were like 4 or 5 of us up there with our 10, 9, 8, 7. And they got judged on content. They got judged on presentation. They got judged on eye contact. They could not use their phones. They could not read. They had to just memorize it and wing it. Then they got deducted if they used the word like or And so we had a ball. And so the first time we do this, Caitlin Ohashi, who was one of the greatest gymnasts in the world, Caitlin Ohashi is the last gymnast to beat Simone Biles. Gymnastically, everybody looked up to Kate. First time she did this exercise, she could not get through 3 words without cracking up. She was so nervous. So nervous. And she would giggle and laugh. I'm like, okay, Kate, you got like a 2 out of 10. Bye. And so it was great for the rest of the team to see this superstar humble herself to get the lowest score in this game that we're doing. And over the course of the years, she became an excellent speaker to the point where she actually writes poetry and does spoken word. She'll go to clubs and speak.
Yes, it looks like they are going to acting classes too. And you mentioned that you include in your choreography some repetition, and it lower the athletes' scores. And I'm in repetition when I was writing some book, and I'm used to Alessandro Barico, and he uses repetition in writing, and it's a powerful tool. So it looks like you're ahead on time in regarding repetition, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. And I learned that from George Balanchine. I would go to New York in the summers and just study George Balanchine and his choreography and the whole bit. And It is, you said, it's very, very powerful. Um, I've noticed that in books that I read, like you just said. I just got through reading Fierce Conversations and by Susan Scott. And in the book, she starts, like at the very beginning, she'll say the importance of how to move any needle forward is the relationship, and the conversation is the relationship. And when I read that, I just glossed over it. Then I read it again, like a few chapters later. Like by the time I got to the end of the book, she probably said this 10 times. Conversation is the relationship. But it took me till like the seventh or eighth time of reading this to go, there's a reason why she keeps repeating this. And I had my aha moment. And it's the same choreographically. If you have a phrase of music that is like the iconic part of that routine, that music, and then it repeats itself, how powerful to repeat that same exact choreography. And sadly, we were being, I mean, the judges are human, and most of them have not had my training choreographically, performance wise. They don't understand that. All they saw was the rules and the code of points. And it was like, it's not really artistic if you're repeating the same 16 counts. And I was like, no, it is artistic. It's really artistic. Oh, there
Yeah.
was a few moments like that. I got deducted. Okay. um, there was an athlete that did a routine to Enya's music, and the whole last part of it was like this person had just finished running a marathon and they were breathing heavily. And I did the same thing with a student athlete on the floor. As soon as she finished her last pass, it was like she was done and she was spent and she just left it all on the floor. And the judges deducted because they said I ended with a sex scene. It's
Yeah.
like, no, that was not a sex scene. You kind of missed the whole point. Just because you heard heavy breathing does not mean it was a sex scene. But there was quite a few moments like that during my coaching career that I was just like, insert this emoji, okay? Yeah.
Yes, and you are married since a long time with Bobby. What did Bobby bring to your life? And you can share some secrets about lasting relationships.
Yeah. Uh, I married a saint, and my first year, and I'm fiery and a brat. And my first few years, he drove me insane. My first few years of our marriage, because he's so good. And I'm such a brat. Like I can be a brat at capital bold letters. And at one point, I think it was like 3 years into our marriage, I threw my arms up and I said, "You're driving me crazy. I feel like I'm married to John Wooden." And Bobby looked at me. He's like, "Why do you say that like that's an insult?" I said, "Because it's really hard to be married to somebody as good as you are, you know? It's like when I want to pick a fight, you don't engage. When I want to be a brat, you just let me be a brat. You don't even get on my case for being a brat." Um, so COVID hits. So Bobby was our defensive coordinator for football at UCLA. I was coaching gymnastics. Our lives were like this, okay? I mean, we didn't see each other at home hardly at all. COVID hits. Now we're home. And I'm like, I'm not used to this.
Nobody's used to that.
And you know what? I was taken back daily by how kind my husband is. His kindness is genuine. His kindness supersedes him needing to be right. His kindness, he leads with kindness in everything. So, shortly into COVID, as I'm really cluing into this, and I'm realizing I don't treat my husband with the same level of kindness I treat other people. I take him for granted. And I was like, that's not good. That's not fair. That's not right. And thankfully I had a model in him of kindness. Like it's first thing in the morning, it's like, good morning. Did you sleep well? Good morning. Can I get you a cup of coffee? Good morning. What do you got on your plate today? Good. Like, even when I'm just rolling out of bed, whatever, he's like, my love, you're so pretty. Good morning. Like, and like I said, I realized that I was very short. I was very curt. I was like, I would get up and I would just, okay, what do I have to get done before my first Zoom or before my first podcast or before my first meeting? And he was an afterthought. So if I could say one thing, it's tap into your kindness. Look how you treat other people. And do you treat your spouse, the person you've chosen to have in your life, with that same level of respect and kindness? And I can honestly tell you, I respect my husband more than any human on the planet.
Yeah, you perform some introspection here, and it looks like Bobby has high standards, and you check them if they were regular. It was for granted,
Right.
and you have a health situation back in 2013,
Mm-hmm.
unexpected, and
Mm-hmm.
you were able to reframe, uh, let's say, not terminal, but a severe illness. How could you trick your mind and embrace that illness and move forward?
Thank you for asking that, because this is the most important turning point in my life. When I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she didn't say, oh, you've got some breast cancer. My doctor said, you have a very aggressive form of breast cancer, and I have to see you immediately. And I hung up the phone, and my head exploded in fear. How many more days did I have to live? Was there treatment for me? Am I going to lose my hair? How sick am I going to be? Are they going to tell me I have 6 months or 3 months? Like, how am I going to tell my family? How am I going to tell Bobby? How am I going to tell the team? And just all of these questions. And in this very loud noise, I heard a whisper that said, be anxious for nothing and grateful for all things. And I interpreted that immediately as God speaking to me. And I got very snarky with God. Remember I said I was a brat? Yeah, okay. I was brat 2.0 with God at that moment. And I just looked up and I said, excuse me, God, I don't know if you've heard or not, but I've gotten diagnosed with a potentially fatal tumor in my breast, okay? So be anxious for nothing and grateful. This isn't sitting well at all right now. And I heard it a second time. Be anxious for nothing and grateful for all things. So I went home and I told my husband about the breast cancer, which he was very sad to hear. And then I told him about hearing God say this twice. And my husband, who grew up Southern Baptist, said it's from the Bible. Well, I grew up Greek Orthodox. The Bible was in Greek. I never read the Bible. And he says, go look it up. So I go look it up. And sure enough, in Philippians 4, it's in black and white. I heard this before I ever read it. And my husband says, God in his infinite wisdom knew he had to tell you twice so you would shut up and listen. And so I knew it was a commandment. It wasn't a suggestion. Be anxious for nothing is a commandment. It's not a suggestion. But I didn't know how I was going to obey the commandment. And then I went to my doctor and she said, I just need you to know, if you got diagnosed 10 years ago in 2004, we had nothing for your type of breast cancer. And I would have had to say, I'm so sorry. You've got about 2 months. Go get your affairs in order. But because you're diagnosed in 2014, we have a chemotherapy cocktail that if you choose to get it, that's why choice to me is the most important word in life. If you choose to get chemotherapy and surgery, we know it's going to work. In that instant, I understood the commandment, how I was going to obey the commandment. I'm be anxious for nothing through gratitude. Gratitude is the elixir for fear. And so any anxiety that I had, I would say, but time out, I get to get chemotherapy. I get to. And my athletes thought I was nuts when I would say that. And they're like, Miss Val, chemotherapy is poison. They shoot through your veins. I know. I get to get chemo because I live at a time to have chemo. Guess what? The chemo is giving me more days. How cool is this? So I called it going to my chemo spa. And I remember saying that to a few of their chemotherapy patients, and they looked at me like I was crazy and they did not want to hear it. I'm like, no. A spa's like where you go to get better. That's why we go to chemotherapy. We're not going to chemotherapy to get worse. We're going to get better. How cool is that? So I have learned since then, I've asked military people, I've asked surgeons about anxiety. And is there any place in life where being anxious does help a situation? They say, no. Because when you're in a fight or flight situation, when you're in a do or die situation, I have a friend who is a cardiac surgeon for babies. And he's like, when I'm going in there, if I am not 100% confident and calm, if there's any anxiety, it affects the decisions that I will be making on this child's heart. I cannot be anxious. How do I get, and so gratitude truly is the great elixir. And so this surgeon said to me, if I start feeling a little anxious, I just immediately say, how grateful am I that I have the tools to be able to help this baby, this young human, live. And gratitude since then has become my default. I can honestly tell you 1 minute of every day, there's not 1 minute that passes without me being grateful for something. I am so grateful. This is water. This is not. I'm so grateful that I have clean water to drink. There's a lot of people that don't have clean water to drink. It starts first thing in the morning. I'm so grateful that I was safe in my room in my bed last night. Oh, guess what? I can get out of bed by myself. How cool is that? And on and on and on throughout the day.
Yeah, being grateful is a powerful message, and you could overcome that because first you listen and then you share it with your husband that gave you some guidance. And you made a lot of public speaking for organizations and different companies. What are the topics that you that you go on in the different audience that you face?
I love that question because I speak for a lot of different companies. Like I've spoke for JP Morgan Chase. I spoke at NASA, a bunch of really, really smart engineers. I spoke at Chick-fil-A in front of 10,000 people. I spoke Keller Williams all over the place. Alex Rodriguez had me out like speaking at his retreat. Um, when you look at those, they're made up of all different professions. The bankers at JP Morgan, the engineers at NASA, the feel good people from Chick-fil-A, and the commonality, getting back to what I said earlier about Susan Scott's book, Fierce Conversations, is the relationship. And since COVID has hit, the relationship part of our work has diminished, partly because people are either working remotely full-time or hybrid. They're not in the office all the time. And perfect example of this, I was speaking with, to the NASA engineers, and I just said to them, and I said, you guys are like the 1% of the 1% of the smartest people in the world. It doesn't matter how much you have up here and how much you know. If you cannot effectively communicate that in a way that is easy to understand and inspiring. And that is why communication skills are so vital. And that's when the relationship starts to form. And so when I was working with NASA, we did a workshop afterwards. And I said, let's just start with share something about yourself that your colleagues don't know about you. And they went around, and the very last guy that went up was an old gentleman, kind of a curmudgeon looking guy. And he stood up and he just said, yeah, my name's Keith. And something that you guys probably don't know about me is me and my wife adopted 3 little black boys a few years ago. The whole room went silent. And then they were like, what? And then 2 weeks later, I did a debrief with the directors of NASA. And I said, what resonated, what didn't resonate, blah, blah, blah. And they said that one exercise has changed the energy within the department. And this director said she was walking down the hall and she saw Keith walking down the hall. And a younger colleague came up to him, put his arm around him, and said, Keith, tell me about these 3 boys you adopted. When you can establish that type of energy, communication, empathy, compassion within your company, that's when your company really, that's the secret sauce to your company really becoming something very special.
Yeah, you move energy and you explain it when all the hugs and kisses to your athletes, and now in these organizations, you are moving energy all the time. And before our last question, where can people can find your book, or can find your site, or can reach you to book you at a speaking engagement?
Thank you. Thank you for asking. Um, my website is officialmissval.com, and on there is my manager's information. His name is Gary Menzer, and that's where most people book me from. Um, my book is on Amazon, and I have to tell you that the majority of requests I get are from people who watch my TED Talk, because it asks the question, is all winning success? And we're living in a time now where we're seeing the casualties of what happens when you embrace a win at all cost culture. And we embrace winning at all cost at every level. I mean, we're doing that with our 7-year-olds on the baseball field, you know. It's horrible. It's in politics, it's in business, it's in athletics, it's everywhere. And what we're seeing now, I love talking about all this right now because the research has come in. When you embrace a win at all cost culture, the casualties, it's not the loss, it's human beings. It's the emotional, mental, and sometimes physical abuse of humans. And if you are willing to accept that responsibility, then great, keep doing what you're doing. But if you're not, and if you've got any sense of humanity, you'll realize there's another way to lead. There's another way to go about winning.
Yeah. And to summarize, I want to share a quote from your book, a quote from Twyla Sapp, and it says, "Art is the only way to run away without leaving home." And as you said, life is a choice, and you choose to thrive, and to thrive with style. So, what is the latest message that you want to share with our listeners?
Ah, the latest message that I would like to share is all of our worlds have become much more dense with our to-do lists and noise from the outside world. And when we succumb to all of that, when we use our downtime to scroll through social media, all we're doing is putting more stuff in our brains. And what we're lacking desperately now is stillness throughout the day. And so, yes, if you're one of these people that gets in the morning and starts their day with, 15 to 20 minutes of meditation, and yeah, hallelujah, amen to you. But a majority of us get out of bed and we just start running. And that is one reason why, this is a really long answer to your question, I'm sorry. But this is one reason why I feel so strongly about gratitude. Because when we can practice stillness in small moments throughout our day, it has a way of that, that refresh button on your computer when you hit it and all the junk goes away and just the important stuff is left. When we're still, that's when the noise dissipates. That's when we can hear our inner voice. That's when the creative parts of our brain can ignite. In stillness, not when we're doing 100 different things. And so when I say gratitude has become my default, think about this. In order to say something in your head that you're grateful for, it takes a moment of stillness, It takes a moment of clarity and authenticity as to what are you why are you taking this moment to pause and be grateful for what? It's authentic to you. You're not reading a Hallmark card. It's authentic to you. And so if you make that your default, you are, think about the compound effect of all those moments of stillness you're having throughout the day. I feel like I rack up 2 yoga classes during the course of a day just through all of my moments of gratitude.
Yeah, I will summarize with what you said, the compound effect of that moments of stillness, because we have the compound effect of social media and we know where it takes us. So thanks, Miss Val, for today's conversation, and for sharing your book and teaching gymnastics in a great way, with style, with charm. And as I said to you, all your athletes and yourself look impeccable in every video, in every talk, in every stage that you encounter. So thanks for today's conversation, Miss Val.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the ask. Have a good day.